Yes, we are live. Yeah. Cool. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the fourth edition of Speciale Talks. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope everyone is staying safe and hope everything comes back to normal soon. I'm super excited for this session personally. We have an amazing panelist today this time, one of my favorite topics as well. So without any further delay, I'd like to invite and introduce Arjun, founding partner of Special Invest, who will be moderating the session. Over to you, Arjun. Thank you so much for taking your time, and all the panelists as well.
Thank you, Dhanush, for setting that stage. Super excited to host this session this morning on a weekday. Thank you, everyone, for joining. This is edition 4 of Speciale Talks, a series of talks that we have with early to growth stage founders that are building SaaS companies mainly, and so that we can learn from their experiences on different aspects of building the SaaS business, right? And we've spoken about a variety of subjects before this in the first 3 editions. Today's topic is, again, as Dhanush mentioned, something very close to our heart and something is very important for very early stage entrepreneurs to learn and understand about. Building the business is about understanding your customer, particularly in the early stage, identifying the right customer, the ideal customer profile, the buyer profile, and then fine-tuning GTM strategy to that profile, and then figuring your growth strategy out. Very important topic for us to discuss. And we have 3 amazing early stage founders, right, that are building really cool SaaS companies over the last few years that have joined us to speak today, right? Quick introduction on them. I will let them speak more in detail, but quick introduction on them. We have Asad Khan, who's co-founder at Lambda Test, right? Has built an amazing business over the last few years that we've been observing, right? Like he likes to say, Noida to Nevada. He's building this business and for amazing testing of products for testing teams across browsers, across apps, devices, right? So we'll hear more about what he's building and how they have evolved over the last few years, right? So welcome, Asad. We have Karthi, who is co-founder at Hippo Video, right? Chennai-based SaaS company, comes from the hub of SaaS in India, and has a rich history of coming from India's SaaS gurus, Zoho, and then has started Hippo Video a few years ago, built for marketing and sales teams to enable video marketing to be done much more efficiently and in a much more automated fashion. Have seen immense growth and scale over the last few years with tailwinds during the COVID times also, right? So super excited to have Karthi also today joining us and sharing his insights. Thank you, Karthi, for joining today.
Sure.
Also Nirman Dave, right, coming in today, co-founder at obviously.ai, building cutting edge tools for AI developers, right, to make it easy for them to create AI models and make it no code, low code, which will hopefully democratize AI and machine learning model creations, right? So that's a very exciting space, emerging space, I'd say, a little earlier in the journey maybe, and he's joining us from San Francisco, again, the heart of the Silicon Valley. So we'll learn a lot from him as well. Thank you for joining us so late in the day from there. Appreciate it, Nirman. Thank you.
Thank you.
So just the flow for today's conversation, we'll talk about their early journeys. We'll talk about how they've identified their customer profiles, right? What do they do today, and what is their GTM strategy? How did that evolve over the first few years, right? No further ado, we'll open it up just for first round of introductions from each of the speakers to talk about their companies, talk about the genesis of their company and what they're building and where they are in the journey also. Asad, maybe you can start with you.
Hello, everyone. Glad to be a part of this panel and part of this session today. My name is Asad Khan, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Lambda Test. We are building a testing platform, test execution platform for developers and testers globally. Started from Noida, expanded into Bangalore and Bay Area now. It's been 4 years in the journey, and building a platform or building a vertical SaaS has a lot of different approach actually. So we started building a platform right from the beginning, that we had a clear vision that we are going into multiple product lines, land and expand model, building a platform for large community. There are 23 million developers and testers in the market. So a lot of challenge when we started. We'll talk more in detail. 150 people team right now, and hiring more, and looking forward to have a discussion with Nirman and Karthi. Big fan, Nirman, what you're doing. We spoke earlier as well, a couple of months back. And Karthi, I mean, we know from the search, Cohort, fellow founder, big fan of what Hippo Video is doing. Video is a crazy market. So would love to talk more about that, how our journey been there. And thank you so much for having me today.
Thanks, Asad. Karthi, over to you, right? Talk a little bit about your Hippo Video and the journey so far.
Yeah, first of all, thanks to the panel, especially special in this team, Vishesh, Arjun, and Dhanush. Thanks for inviting me to this panel, and I'm excited to share the dais with Azad and Nilman. So looking forward to learn some few tips and tricks from them as well on the GTM strategy. Talking about me, I'm Karthi Marayappan, co-founder of Hippo Video, along with my two friends. So I was working in Zoho for 16 years. In 2016, I quit and started this organization. So we were strong believers in video. Video is the propelling medium in any businesses was our idea. In 2016-17, it was little early into the businesses. So we were doing a couple of interesting vanilla platforms before we pivoted into what we are doing now, specifically on enabling sales and marketing professionals inside any businesses to connect and engage better with their prospects and customers with interactive videos. So that's what we have been doing. As I've said, yes, the initial years were really, really tough to understand how to go about this market, understanding the GTM motion, all of those. I'll be glad to share my experiences here. Thank you.
Thanks, Karthi, and welcome once again. Nirman, over to you. Quick introduction of what is Obviously.ai and what you're building.
Cool. Well, thanks so much, everyone, for having me here, Arjun. I'm very excited to be here with Asad and Karthi as well. I learn a lot from the distance from what you guys do. Quick overview about what we do. Our company is called Obviously AI. It's a no-code tool to allow anyone to build their own AI models without writing code. My personal background is I grew up in India. After high school, I moved to study here in undergrad near Boston, and I was working at a company where I was the only data science person at the company. And every non-technical analyst, business analyst, marketing analyst would come up to me and ask me questions about machine learning models, AI models like regressions and things like that. So that's where this idea started, was can we build a tool that allows anyone without a background in data science to build and use their own AI models. Started from a small basement with a co-founder of mine here in San Francisco, and we're a fairly small team, fairly early in our journey today, but very, very excited in this new market. So yeah.
Super. Thank you so much. Right. The other interesting aspect about today's panel is, right, everybody is still in early stage. I can say that, right, because the journey is usually long, and the aspirations, I'm sure, go a long way, right? But within the three, there is seed stage founder, which is Nirman, right? Karthi's Series A funded recently. Congratulations on that. So that's a certain milestone to achieve, getting product market fit in the next stage. Asad recently raised Series B. Again, the next milestone after that, after a little bit of scaling and finding, a larger market to go after and making substantial progress. So just that stages of evolution will be interesting for the audience to learn from. So that's a little flavor of where everybody is in their journey, right? I'll start off talking about very early stage of how each of you picked the market to play in, right? How did you think of when you thought about the problem statement and the solution that you wanted to build or were starting to build? How did you think of your early customer profile, right? Did you Did you have high level of clarity on it? Were you looking to figure out a few more things? Did you have a broad understanding and then wanted to narrow in? Right. I know in most of your cases, there was some past experience of yours of where you were working, what work you were doing, and that led you to this insight. So I would love for you to talk about that really early stage, first year, first 6 months of company building. All right, that would be very interesting. Asad, if you can start with you, and in your case particularly, you were running another company before you started this, right? Maybe that was the genesis, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Arjun. I had a landscape experience for like 10, 12 years, and 7 years in my last company. And that was a pure play independent testing services company. But that company's focus was to help the product companies in Bay Area and Central Europe market. So we worked very closely with the VP engineering and CTOs to set up their world-class automation lab right here in Noida, and completely offshore solutions actually built on top of open source, fast-paced environment, and deliver at speed. So if you talk about our customers, our top 10 customers got acquired in $30 billion in 5-7 years. So we were very much focused that we will only work with the product companies. We will not go behind Fortune 500. And that was a very clear business model right from the beginning because of the learning that we required. Right? When we got acquired in 2015, I helped them for 2 years on the exit side. And during that time, that looking at the DevOps growth, that how the DevOps is changing very fast, and a couple of competitors, but not fully DevOps company, we decided to build a test execution platform. So people get confused that we are a testing tool company. But actually, if you look at closely, we are expert in automation. We automate the infra very fast. And that's our business. We automate it and we give it on the scale. So problem that we started with and what we are solving now has a little bit changed now. So we started building cross-browser testing and Selenium automation for testers initially. But when you start, the problem is that the building the trust with the user is the icebreaker actually. How will you do that? Because testers, they are quite settled. If you go after enterprise, they're quite settled with the tool and they have framework in place, and they can't take risk with their releases and time to market, right? To try the new product. But this is not applicable to all the product. In Nirvan case, it may be different. In Karthik case, it may be different, right? For us, it was difficult that how to build a trust with the user to try our product. And when you are building initially, your product is not that mature. And especially in the cloud space, it takes a lot of time to stabilize the cloud because you're dealing with the machines. And if you don't spend enough time and bandwidth to stabilize the machine, the quality will not come out. And it's not about performance, it's all about reliability, it's all about security. So the very, very tough time initially to build the trust. Then you have to tweak little bit that what is your mainstream persona that you're targeting. For example, it was testers, right? Maybe initially you should not target them and go and target individuals and those community where building a trust with them is much faster, because they, for example, digital marketing companies for cross-browser testing was very good persona that we went after, right? So if you go and build the trust we went ahead and we built the trust with them and brought them on board quickly. You need a lot of users to shape up your idea for the large market, right? And once you have a set of users, they'll keep telling you what is next. You cannot plan everything on the day one. Day 10, it looks very different. and customer drives it. So in our case, building the trust with the first cohort of users were very important, and you clearly know. I mean, in exceptional cases, you have a best product in the market, so you clearly win immediately. But in our case, it was not the case. I mean, we had more features, we had a bit of product, but at some level, stability, quality was not up to mark. We were continuously working, but you have to keep the wheel running. So you need some users to tell you. So building a trust with the immediate adopters, early users who can trust on you, I will say is good to target on. Despite your large market is something else, but you cannot delay your GTM because you're not getting feedback. If you're delaying your GTM, you're not getting feedback, and the feedback is the only thing which will shape your overall product management roadmap going forward. How the product will look like after a year or two once these set of users starts coming in. So, and you should not target completely odd cohort that will blow the product away, because I mean you need a related community and somewhere low hanging fruits where you can go and build the trust around them. So initially both the co-founders, we were involved in cold calling these people and talking to them, build the trust and make sure that they start using it and start the journey. So this was the start. I'll go in more detail how we moved on the testers cohort and developers cohort, but would love to listen that how Karthi
Yeah, no, very interesting, and very pertinent point. What I'm hearing you say is, there is a large market that you have identified that you want to go after, but you may not be ready on day one, right? And therefore, adoption will be slow in that core market. So you find adjacent markets where adoption, or let us say the audience is a customer is a little more forgiving, right? And will use your early product in your early version the way it is, and then start giving you feedback so the roadmap moves forward, and then you figure things out from there. Those conversations teach you a lot. That's the first step that you're talking about.
I agree, and that I mean this might be hacked a little bit, but you always have competitors who, I mean there are a set of users who are actually not happy with the competitors. Identifying them and reaching out them is the key. So you will always, if you have a right set of questions when you're targeting them and asking them why they are not happy with the competitor, and you work on that, probably you'll start getting some traction out of that cohort. So that would be the us actually.
Hold that thought, because we'll come back to that specific thought of how do you ask the right questions. I think that's a whole different full conversation by itself, in my opinion. Karthik, over to you. Sort of similar question. Early days, did you have a persona in mind? You had a few personas in mind. I know you had background and history at Zoho. Maybe there were some specific insights that you found from your time at Zoho that told you there's an opportunity, that there's a gap in the market. Right? Just talk us through that early phase of who you were going after and why you were going after them.
Yeah. So in 2016, when we quit Zoho and started off this, so I was primarily taking care of the HR suite of products at Zoho. So I had a natural understanding of how a learning management system is a key for onboarding new employees into an organization, help them train, continuous training, etc. So, but we believed strongly in videos, so we wanted to build that LMS around the videos. So we started with that idea and moved into the market, building the product very quickly, taking some initial feedback like what Azad said. But the key problem what we faced was it was only enterprises still adopting LMS then. It was never into mid-market even. So breaking that was becoming a little problem. But enterprises was accepting it, but it was a larger cycle. But what really happened was when we showcased our video as
your initial assumption and as hope was to go after the SMB.
Yes.
Mid-market. Would that be right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. So we thought the world is expanding, so we should be having that, but it was not so. But what really happened was people were very much interested with the video component. They said, hey, this is quite interesting. What other use cases you can solve me for? Can you do some support tickets with this kind of thing? They asked. So that's when we pivoted and launched a separate product called Hippo Video. So, and when we launched, there is this boon and bane of a new category, right? So the new category always drives this early adopters. And for us, it drove early adopters from different streams. It was not like one particular segment that came into the system. It was like educationers or gamers, YouTubers. You had support person, you had marketing, sales. Everyone was driving into the system. So we really understood the market is there, but how do we traverse that? So we took the low hanging fruit where we saw, like when we talked to early founders and people, the early thing what we saw was support, because people wanted to solve it very fast and very efficiently as well. And they don't want to repeat it. So they capture the video, screen capture and send it across kind of thing. So we started digging deeper. We had some initial successes, but we hit a roadblock, I should say. What happened was we could not reach out to support people at large scale. People were not searching also. So we tried AdWords kind of thing, but people were not searching for like, how do I resolve my tickets through video? Okay. So it became understood, and they did not have stronger communities also, like sales community or developer community. They will be very strong. But if you look around, there were not many support communities that you can go after, or support influencers also. There were few customer success influencers alone. So then we started understanding what other people are coming into our system. So we had huge amount of inbound premium product. So product-led growth was our initial GTM strategy itself. So people were coming in close. Then we started understanding who is using the product very much and where they are in the front line. That's when we understood that sales is the biggest chunk of people who are coming in, trying to do some prospecting or deal handling through videos. So then we did a small pivot within the business and made ourselves understanding like, okay, we will go after businesses, but the beachhead is going to be sales. Then expand into other workflows. So that's how we have been doing now. So we enter into sales workflow, then people adopt it for marketing or support or internal communication kind of use cases. But the beachhead is sales first thing. So
got it. Could I just want to understand how much time did that phase of I want to find support people to adopt this, because that's what I think that we value, and then trying to find them, trying to do certain marketing activities or outreach activities to find them, either communities, digital, Google, etc., and then struggling to find enough, and then like you said, lower hanging fruit and trying some PLG. And PLG is a very, very interesting concept in general. Everybody's talking about it today, right? And we'll talk a lot more about each of your approaches or definitions of PLG, right? But particularly, how much time did it take for you to arrive at sales being the beachhead in the early days?
It took like 3 quarters. We took it a little longer because we thought, okay, we are doing it wrong. So we did, okay, we'll do 1 more quarter and try. We'll try some other opportunity or cold calling, cold outreach, emailing, but it never happened. So it took like 3 quarters for us to realize and move it to sales.
Got it. Nirman, your thoughts, you are in a very interesting market, which again, the machine learning AI space itself in the last 5 years, right, has really, gone to another level, right? And, how many machine learning engineers and AI engineers are there in the world is drastically improved. The tool ecosystem around it is also so crowded and so unique. Every day that is different. The workflows are still getting, figured out, if I could say so, right? So there's a lot more flux, if I may say, in your space, right? Because it's an early evolution phase of the market itself, right? How did you arrive on your ideal profile of machine learning teams or individuals to use your product? Walk us through early conversations and thinking.
Yeah. So when we got started, it was just me and my co-founder. We were just kind of coding this tool out to make it really easy for people that we worked with to build simple, repetitive AI models like regressions and classifications, things like that. And at the time, we were working with a technical PM, and we would just go to him and we'd be like, "Hey, check this out. Does this make sense for you?" So on and so forth. Then we started to say, "Look, let's talk to a couple of other PMs as well in our network." Right. And when we started to talk to more PMs, we realized that PMs didn't know much about data or machine learning. And we got lucky with our technical PM, but a lot of PMs outside of that didn't care, right? So then we said, okay, let's go to, people that know data science, right? Data scientists and machine learning engineers, who it was us in our companies, but let's go to other people. And it turned out that these guys preferred to write code, or they wanted to use something more, deeply technical or advanced in terms of the software. And we were like, oh, these guys are not going to be the right fit as well, right? So we went through some of those iterations there, and we started to land on, we started to see that there was this trend where some of these mid-sized companies between 50 to 250 employees, they were hiring their first machine learning data science engineers. And the challenge was that there weren't enough data science engineers and PhDs that they could hire that knew machine learning. So what these guys would do was they would end up hiring, folks that are bachelors in data science that are just getting out of college, or masters that are just kind of, beginning to get hands-on. And they would eventually train them for a period of time and then have them, understand the data, and it would take a couple of years for them to actually build meaningful models. Right? These are not product-facing models; they're mostly internal models. And so that's where we started to realize that there's this new interesting role, which now has a word, apparently. It's called the citizen data scientist, which is that people who know and understand data a lot, but are not engineers and programmers to actually write code. Right? These are like bachelor students in data science that understand machine learning, but not engineers. So we started to hone into them, and then eventually, went through multiple different phases. But I think that was one way we started to realize that's the kind of audience we want to narrow down and work with. And then over time, we had more challenges as well. I'm happy to talk more in depth as well. But some of our big challenges were like, how do we talk to them about the product? Right? Because at the time when we started, it was around 2019, and there was no concept of no-code machine learning, and it wasn't that popular of a buzzword, right? So we had to find messaging market fit before we could find product market fit, and that was pretty interesting journey as well. But that's a quick brief. I'm happy to dive into
It's
some.
very interesting couple of phrases that you used. One is the citizen developer, or citizen AI developer, right? Something I'm hearing for the first time, but very interesting. And then you're talking about messaging market fit. You want to talk a little more about that? What do you mean when you say that messaging market fit?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Please help us out there.
Yeah, so I think messaging market fit is this idea that you want to find the best kind of messaging that can get the highest top of funnel, right? So initially what we used to do was we used to say, hey, here's an automatic AI builder tool, right? Go use it. And nobody cared. Like people were like, okay, automatic AI builder looks cool, but does it make sense for me? And slowly we started to refine that messaging over time. And we started to focus on data predictions tool, data predictions without code. And that's what we've settled onto today. And eventually, what we did was we wanted to get a lot of people in the funnel, right? So what we did was first we actually had a blog post we put out there. We said, look, we're going to write blog posts and get people, right? And initially it wasn't working. So to get the blog posts, which is, content-led marketing, to really work for you, we had to find messaging market fit, which was the idea that, if we write this kind of content, and if it's in this kind of category, in this kind of area, we're going to find the best kind of top of funnel leads. And so eventually it took us about 6 to 8 months to really figure that out. And we landed in the no-code AI space. And at the time, 2020 was when no-code was slowly starting to take off. And AI, no-code AI was fairly barren land that we were able to conquer. So that's how we found kind of our messaging market fit of no-code AI. Easy to explain, easy to understand, and it found the right kind of persona for us as well. So that helped us build that top of funnel.
Hey, thank you for sharing that. Very, very interesting. I always think about any SaaS company, probably maybe any company, but mostly SaaS companies, right? On the homepage, right in the first banner, what is that punchline, right? That is not an easy punchline to arrive at, right? When you are solving a problem, it could solve a problem for 5 different personas, or it could be said in 5 different ways, right? And maybe partly what you're saying is, you get that right. Of course, then you get how do you explain the product itself a little more, and then how do you write long form content as well, right? Messaging market fit, very, very interesting concept, right? I want to move to this added part of this entire exploration journey, finding your lower hanging fruit phase, and talk to each of you about, at this time, are you thinking strongly about the size of the organization? I know Nirman mentioned a little bit, right, about they were 100, 200 people organizations, right, with certain data science teams or just starting to set up data science teams, right? Is there starting to come a definition of the nature of the organization that you want to target, right? Again, somewhere they're starting to define SMB, mid-market, and I'm hearing from all three of you, enterprise was some time away, not yet ready, right? In the early stage, let's say the first 12 months, maybe 18 months, maybe even longer, right? And in some cases, clearly focused on anyway the mid-market, right? So do you start thinking, are these personas coming from the right sized companies? Do you start finding companies based on size, based on their, what capital they've raised, how many employees are there, et cetera, et cetera? Are those filters starting to kick in when you're starting to find top of the funnel leads, right? Nirman, start with you, quickly talk about that. Was that easy to come to saying this has to be 100 people organizations, 200 people organizations with 5-member AI teams?
Yeah, no, I think we first initially got a little bit greedy. We said we're going to go after enterprises right away. They're going to give you big check sizes. It's going to be exciting, right? And we got a couple of people in the pipeline as well, right? We got some few big names in the pipeline. We were like, oh my God, big check sizes. It's going to be great. Eventually what started to happen was, these guys would take months to get permission to actually even use the test data on obviously AI. They would then have to go through like POCs and, crazy cycles. And then we said, oh, this is not going to work. So let's go to smaller businesses who we can build trust really fast, right? But the challenge for us was that we could build trust fast, but they didn't have enough data set to get anything meaningful out of it. And so they're like a couple hundred rows, and they'd be like, okay, give me like 2 months, I'll collect more data and come back. Right? Never happened. And so we slowly started to eventually find our niche. And actually the turning point for us was, one day we'd always been a self-serve product from the start, right? Anyone can sign up and get started. And one day we started to see some of our revenue spike up, which came from, this South African company that had just jumped directly without any interaction from us, had jumped on a $500 per month plan at the time. And we were like, oh, this is awesome. Like, I don't even know who these guys are. And so I think through those kind of conversations, we started to realize, okay, typically companies that are about 100 or 150, that's the time when if they're not an AI company already, right? If they're not an AI company already, that's the time when they would typically start to, hire serious data scientists for like serious business-driven decisions. And that's kind of where we started to say, okay, let's double down on that section.
Got it. Karthi, your experience, right? Was that clear? That was what the size of the company, what was SMB, what was mid-market, right? When you found particularly the sales profile, right? Did you have a view whether there should be 10 salespeople in this organization, or it should be smaller, or it should be larger?
So when we initially started off with the sales, as I said, it was more inbound through this premium product. We had put out a Chrome extension through which people also create videos. So the word was spreading, all of those content related things also we did. So most of them who came in were initially from the SMB or some individuals from mid-market, but not many. But with the COVID turning around, we saw a lot of people from mid-market coming in, trying out product, bubbling enough to that. So it was initially into SMB. So we were doing with SMBs. We still continue to serve the SMB, and our total focus today is into mid-market because for two reasons. One, their staying power is longer because they come in a team. So what we found was if they come in as a team, they actually stay longer because video per se, still people believe it's not their forte. So they need someone to talk about it, like how did they do it, all of those. So we find if they come in with a team of more than 3 people, they stay longer. So now we are focusing only on teams with more than 3+ users as a sales front. But we have the Silso where the SMBs come and use our product and continue to use it.
Got it. Maybe, Karthi, just for the audience, and while everybody talks about SMB, mid-market, enterprise, what is your definition of each of those, right? Yeah. How do you define it? What is the metric that matters to call this SMB and then mid-market, right?
Yeah. So we categorize this based on the number of employees. So as up to 10 employees, we call it as VSB, very small business, owner driven. And up to 50, we call them as SMBs. And 50 to 3,000, we call it as mid-market. And 3,000 above, we call it as enterprise internally.
Understood.
Some of the organizations, they do it till 250 as SMB, but we cut short it to 50.
Got it. And of course, some of this will translate into ACVs for you also, right?
Exactly.
Which therefore is a natural progression, another way of slicing this market in the way.
Yes.
Understood. Very helpful. Asad, what about you, right? You mentioned, you were not ready for enterprises. You had to do this thing, whoever was coming to you and you were getting low-hanging fruit. How did you start slicing the market a little bit? What were you comfortable doing in the early days?
So our market is a little bit different. I mean, we are targeting developers and testers, and starting with the early product design choices are very important. That from every phase, that how will you, pivot your go to market strategy. It started with a low touch bottom up, and strategy was very clear that we want these individual developers, digital marketing companies, and individual testers from different companies to try the product faster. So when you talk about bottom up, low touch, the time to value is very important. So how faster you experience the product, the landing of the user to sign up, and then experiencing the product, if it is more than 2 minutes, that funnel will break actually, right? So your GTM is not a silo function. It doesn't work in silos. It works tightly integrated with your product design, that how your low touch funnel will grow. We got a lot of traction from in first year and two, targeting these individuals and digital marketing companies. But at the same time, the moment we were touching around 500,000 revenue, it was inbound requests from enterprise started coming in. So there's two way. I mean, you can say no, and that's completely fine, because people build the companies in different manner, right? But you can also say yes if you believe that your team is capable enough to drive both the market. We decided to say yes, but at the slow pace. It should not be very fast pace, because you got to learn the enterprise cycle. I mean, when you enter into that market, compliances, security, the long sales cycle. I mean, you need a mature account executives and the account managers to keep cooking these kind of leads, right? So bottom up to enterprise takes a lot of time, but you always need traction from enterprise if you're building a platform. I mean, we are into space where actually companies like Microsoft or Deloitte or KPMG or Boeing, if they are using you, it gives a lot of confidence to the team as well, right? That requires. But at the same time, that bottom of funnel self-serve gives you a amazing momentum, because their sales effort is not going too much. And our 50% funnel right now is without sales effort. And the customer is coming, landing, and they experience the product, they buy. And the moment they experience the product, then the human involvement comes in, that you need support or you need any help to onboard. So building the trust, design your content accordingly to bring them on the right landing page, and then experiencing the product. If this journey is good, you get the credit card on board. But if there is any issue, actually you lose the funnel. On enterprise side, actually it starts with a lot of compliances, a lot of big procurement takes, in our case it takes around 90 days. And but you have a solid pipeline, then it becomes routine actually. Every 90 days you have big chunk amount of customers that are coming on board actually, and we need a different team to go after them. So our sales is more about, sales team is going after only enterprises,
Sure.
and rest is self-serve right now.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Just one question, kind of on the lines of what I asked Karthi, right? But in terms of dollar value, when you started getting that inbound interest from enterprises, when you decided to say yes, right? Because you thought you could serve them, you had to be patient, but you decided you would serve them, right? What was the dollar value difference, right? The SMB self-serve who was coming, what was the dollar and what was the option, right? The enterprise guy, what did you think? Okay, how big is this account that maybe was hopefully one of the indicators for you to say this makes sense. We can put in the effort and then we finally will get there, right? What is the dollar value that you're thinking in your mind and what is coming through?
So in our case, $100,000 deal is an enterprise, and the good logo. And logo is very important to keep the team excited, as well as your board excited as well. So both logo plus ACV together is enterprise.
Got it. Got it. And is that 50x bigger than the SMB ticket size? What is the SMB ticket size?
I would say 20x.
20x. So basically, you're saying about $5,000 is something in SMB that you can.
$5,000 to $10,000 people are using card, and I mean $100,000 they don't use card; they do the wire transfer.
Sure.
So in that case, it becomes a little bit different process. But again, I mean, it's your choice, and you can come. I many times I heard from mentors who I go and talk to. It's very important to say no. You got to figure it out when to say no and for what you have to say no. Because sometimes if you fall in the trap of enterprise, you'll end up building your product for 100 customers, right? And then you get stuck after 10, $20 million. You are building the product for mass market. Can 100, 200,000 or 500,000 or 5 million developers or 10 million developers will use this product or not? You're not building this product for a bunch of enterprises. So for customization, for professional services, if you are strongly saying no to the unique features, you should take care of your bandwidth of the product management team. Otherwise, I mean, your company end up building for a large enterprise, which is giving you like $1 million, $2 million. But problem is that I mean that those use cases are not fit to other customers as well. So if you don't
know that in the early days, but you don't know that in the early days, it's very difficult to figure that out.
You have to figure out, because this is where the risk valley is. I mean, you should not fall in trap. I mean, big account is always exciting, but you have to see that how much effort you're going to put, and plus those asks are for the larger market are specific to the customer. If specific to the customer, please say no. I mean, otherwise you are not building a company for 10, 20 customers. I mean, you'll fall in.
How would you figure this out? How would you figure this out without talking to 20 customers?
That's your product management team job, is to figure out, and is it applicable to the large market? Does this help to my existing customers? Does this help to my SMB market? And if this helps, build it for them, because your feature roadmap will come from the customer only, but you have to categorize them in very nice manner, that what to take when and what to say no. I'll tell you, we refused $1 million deployment when we were doing around $600,000 ARR.
Wow. Yeah, that takes a lot of conviction and clarity.
So this is very important. But
you did that because it was very clear that the expectations of that customer, right, whatever you had to build, the effort to go into that was disproportionately large, and probably a lot of it may not be valuable to many other customers.
It's okay to sell $20 product. I mean, because dollar is not everything. Actually, number of users and engagement is more important. If you have 1,000 users giving you $20, it's completely fine. One day it will blow. You keep looking into that. You look into data and metric, but If you only focus on larger ticket size, that may bring you certain amount, and people might talk you have one customer doing $500,000. Actually, you are providing the services to that customer. You're not giving him a product to use it. So that we have to be careful when we are doing a GTM, actually.
Got it. Got it. That's a very...
So if I may add
Please,
one
Kash.
different picture to that, okay? I understood what Asad is saying. It's purely important to understand. But the other side of it also, say for our case, why we did SMB self-serve and moving into mid-market meant stability, because in a new category, people wanted some education to be happening. People had to be handhold to help them do it again and again. Their habit change, all of those was a bigger problem we faced in SMB. Okay, we did webinars, we did training sessions jointly, etc. But the uptick was not that much. Okay, so people had to be self-motivated to do it. But when we moved into mid-market, it was like both bottoms up. People came in, signed up the product, as well as the top-down took the decision. Okay, we are going to go into video strategy. Now it became easier for us to focus, help them educate, move on, and expand within an account. So it was also a business-driven decision, okay,
Right.
where the low end was not so much stabilized. People come, they churn, go. But in the mid-market, we saw a stability factor coming in as a bigger thing for us. So,
and maybe that's a function of the nature of the product and the nature
exactly.
of engagement of the product itself,
Exactly.
right? Which is what you're pointing out. It is different
Exactly.
in businesses, and one has to figure out what is right for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Very important point. Very important point. I want to pick this up to say, let's talk a little bit about GTM itself, right? Now that you know who, right, who will pay how much, who needs it, what your product capabilities are to solve those problems, right? Reaching them and expanding the funnel as well as moving them to the funnel, right? Of course, all of you have talked about content, right, being sort of a key pillar these days, right? So talk about GTM approaches. What are channels? What are marketing strategies? Right? What all are you using through these phases of evolution? Right? SMB to mid-market, in some case enterprise. Right? How is your marketing efforts evolving through this phase? Right? Karthi, maybe we start with you.
Yeah.
You were
So
talking about webinars, etc. Also for certain audience, not working in certain audience, maybe working for other
yes.
audiences. Right?
Yes.
So that's a very interesting point. Right? So from there, I want to pick that up.
Yes. So on the GTM front, so we are PLG driven, basically product led growth. So we have a freemium product. We have different avenues and different use cases for which any individual can use to create videos, share, etc. So getting the word out was our first motto. So we drove that through a premium product that still has like 1.5 million users or so in our system. So that brought in some good amount of word of mouth. The second important part, I like what Nirman said, is content strategy. That you have to really message it out, like why you should use videos, what are the different use cases, how do you spread that word and reach out to the right audiences. That is where we brought in different kind of content strategy. One is your blogs, your social media content, or most importantly in mid-market, what we find is the review sites like G2 Crowd play a very important role, where you have to bring in a lot of good reviews and be there. So we have been continuously placed as leadership quadrant for the last 4 or 5 quarters. That actually helps in that, because that's an unbiased view, right? People look for unbiased view. So that is another angle we started digging through. And the most important aspect is influencers, because with a new category and people had to be educated and evangelized on why they should be using and what are the different use cases. So we had tied up with a lot of influencers, brought them. We even have our own podcast where people sign up and listen to it. So that thought leadership is also another key that we are still young to build it up. But if you look for any new category, that thought leadership plays an important role, especially when you touch on mid-market, because they want to entertain or engage with people who know the business for a longer run, right? So I would split our GTM strategy is like PLG for bottoms up primarily, content and evangelization as the key strategy. Then once people come into our system, work with us, and we know who are the ICPs we are going in, sales front. So the sales front, we do two things: bottoms up to top down. We move it. So we go team by team, help them expand team by team with our sales motions, as well as through outbound motion. So we know who are the kind of ICPs who find greater value with us, with the product. So we build a TAM with that, go behind them as in cold outreach. So this is what I would say a three-front strategy.
Got it. Very interesting. And I also picked up something you said before in terms of there was some bottom-up adoption, but at the same time there was top-down decision-making also in the mid-market that you observed, right? Is which part of your GTM or marketing efforts are focused on whom, right? Who's the one? There's a user of the product, and then there's the buyer of the product, right?
Yeah.
It
So
seems like there is two different profiles in your case, broadly said.
Yeah,
Please
so that will be mostly into the content strategy, where we push like a lot of display ads, allow people to download some ebook reports, all of those on videos, or the top-down people to understand how this video market is moving along, right? So that is primarily driven through content. Sales is an addition to that, I would say, but people have to be educated in a new category that this is the way forward. Of course, people. Okay, to give you an example, in 2018-19, people still had that doubt. Why videos? Should I use? They were kind of dipping their toe and seeing, oh, should I try? And they were leaving. But today, people have that conviction, and a lot of businesses have put it as a mandate, video strategy, right? So that has really changed. But still, that you have this awareness, then make them believe in conviction, right? That conviction part is still missing there. So you have to support it through a lot of content. I should say. Content, not just in written content. It could be video, it could be social media, it could be ads. It's spread across multi-channel. It's no more a single channel today. Like everybody will agree. You cannot.
I was going to ask that question. Was there one or two channels that really worked big time for you? But seemingly the guidance you're giving or the answer you're saying is no. You have to do multiple channels. You have to be everywhere. You have to create a lot of content and spread the right messaging.
Yes.
Got it. Nirman, anything to add which is unique to your experience and your particular target audience and the segment that you're talking about? Again, a geekier audience, a niche audience, right? Where are they hanging out? Where are you looking for them? Where are you engaging with them? Just throw some light on that.
So I think, well, first of all, the key piece for us was to understand that messaging market fit, right? For example, if we were to go to a buyer persona, which would typically be chief information officer or chief data science officer, folks like that, they would care about things like AI transformations in the organization, right? And everything we'd be doing would be messaged around that. We're going after citizen data scientists, right? Or data analysts, business analysts, these kind of folks. They don't care about that. They care about no-code AI, data predictions without writing code, things like that. So you can see the difference in the tone of messaging here, which was the critical piece for us. And then once we nail down, content in general is also can also be very data driven in the sense that, there isn't always just SEO related content. That's one part of data driven, but there's often, the content that you write is not just blog post on your blog, but it's also, you're in co-marketing all the time. You're doing co-authoring, right? So today we partner with like Forbes, towards Data Science Hacker Noon, that kind of place obviously AI into different channels, into different articles that they write. And so because of that, everything kind of backlinks to your website, and you can say, look, my domain authority is increasing X% month over month. So now we've really tied your content into a KPI. And I think that really, really helps us say, look, we are on top of our content game. And because we are hitting this much domain authority, this is the top of funnel that we're getting. So I think those kind of metrics become really important when it comes to content. But again, as Karthi rightly said, you can't say we're going to just pick one channel of content, which is video, and only do videos. Right? We have to do across different channels, because at the end of the day, you are educating an audience about a new upcoming market. So it has to be through across different channels. But yeah, I think content has been primarily very critical for us as well. Oh, you're muted.
You're on mute, Arjun.
Sorry. I was asking, are you at a stage where you are thinking of a sales org at all, or still that is some distance away? You think, or you may not need it? What's your take on that?
Yeah. Well, so early on we've decided not to be in that large enterprise space, right? Just because of the kind of team and the bandwidth that we have.
Yeah.
So one of our go-to-market that really works well for us is kind of more land and expand, right? We do content, get top of the funnel, and in the past we've grown like an account that was 4 users to close to 35, right? So when we think about sales, we think about sales in this form is to say, look, let's get customers into the product. They like the product. They put their credit card, couple $1,000s in. They're excited. Now let's talk to them about larger sales. So I think that's how we're thinking about sales organization. But again, we're a seed stage company. We're not kind of building out large sales organizations. A couple of people focused on that. So yeah.
Got it. Asad, coming back to you, just to pick up on the GTM side of things. Hey, Asad, you there? Probably network issues there, right? Okay, we'll come back to Asad on that. Karthi, if you can talk about...
Yes, Arjun, we lost him. He's offline now.
He's, I think, back now. Hey, Asad, can you hear us? Okay, we'll go back to him.
No, this is very interesting, Nirman. That how this low code, no code, you are doing a GTM starting from scratch. In our case, actually, we started with the content strategy but personas were very different. When to target and what to target at that moment was very important. So we decided to go after digital marketing companies and the individual testers so we started driving the content in the same manner. But sorry, got muted.
Hey.
But our when we moved up on the GTM funnel towards the enterprise side, it started changing. That how our bottom up approach will have some kind of pivot into GTM strategy as well. But on very ground level, actually, if you can figure out that where your customers are hanging out and what are those channels where actually you can evangelize. But the problem is that if our customers are actually developers and testers, the moment you start selling into community, then you'll be banned. So you have to make sure that it is a soft sell and how you're building the trust with the community so that they can evangelize you. And they will do voluntarily. You cannot hard push them. So identifying those places, how Quora, Medium, DevOps.com, DZone, all these, large community, which is fit to our cohort actually. So we started evangelizing there, and that's how our large funnel on the user acquisition side started. Content is something that is a long tailwind where actually you have to spend a lot of time and you have to be patient. But otherwise, it might. It cannot get your results in 3 months or 4 months. And distribution is another strategy that is very important. Initially for a year or two, you might not get all the traffic on the website. You need a lot of referrals through different channels to land on your website. So how you build the content and how you market it is also a product actually. So your content itself is a product, and how you are actually evangelizing it is another thing to keep in mind. And after that, the moment customer is landing on the website and the landing pages, and if your experience in the product after sign up is not crisp enough, and then the conversion will be a problem again. So that's how we navigated. Affiliate marketing worked for us very, very nicely. We started building that funnel very quickly in the first 2 years only, and we have 700 800 affiliates who are selling us right now.
Wow.
And channel partners we started in third year. not immediately. So every quarter you have something new coming up, that how you started looking at. For example, SEO was working, but never looked at YouTube. But in your case, Karthi, it is very much relevant that how you use the YouTube marketing, right? In our case, it was not from the beginning, but we figured out very late that how YouTube can be a equal bottom of funnel accelerator in our low touch funnel. But in this year we started top down as well, and this is, I mean, this we learn from how the Yammer went after bottom up, and then they started top down as well. It's a hybrid approach when you are in the stage of like maybe 3 years, 4 years after that, right? That your people are picking up the phone and calling Volkswagen, Volvo, Boeing. I mean, can we try? Can we reach out and do some kind of evangelism where we can actually get some kind of traction through outbound channels as well. So it started working beautifully. We just started in January. Would love to have a specific questions if there are any. I guess we don't. Arjun is not online right now.
There is one question that has come actually for Asad. You may have answered it a little bit, but let's go to it. We're at the hour mark, so we should open up to questions, and either they come from the audience or I will throw some more along the way as well, right? Yeah, this is from Avinash.
So Avinash, question is, what if a customer who's a market leader in a space is asking you to build a unique futuristic thing for them? The market might take time to reach there, take or leave the deal.
This is,
I would say, in early stage, take the idea.
Part.
If the idea is amazing, just keep it with you to target in the long term. But building immediately might slow you down, and you have other priorities as well. You have to raise the fund to keep the show running. You have to make sure that your product roadmap, which is targeted for the mass market, larger market, is going on time. So just doing it because someone is asking us to build something which doesn't exist, very unique, futuristic, maybe after 2 years it will blow. Definitely you should keep that idea in the roadmap, but building it immediately might not be a good idea, because which I feel, I mean, there might be some different approach as well, but I feel that bandwidth of your product team and your GTM team, keep those bandwidth in the right direction in a fully optimized manner in first 3 years. Otherwise we lose the momentum. I mean, you cannot grow in the hyper speed in that case. I mean, imagine if you lose couple of quarters in first 12 quarters. I mean, that dent is huge. So just make sure that we're not losing time, and you can build. I mean, the whole journey is for 20 years, 15 years. You want to go to IPO, so maybe 10 years, but and you have amazing time to, you can build that feature that you're seeing that it's an amazing idea that one customer is giving you. But I will say that, I mean, pause that for a moment. We are doing it, by the way. We are going through the similar situation. Idea, we met someone in Salesforce, seen how it is working on the scale. It kicked very well in our mind that it is going to work. We started thinking about it in 2019, but we didn't jump on building it immediately. We are building in this year. And that's how our testers market, we are taking it to developer market now. So we expanded the overall target market now. If you look at the testing competitors, they are mostly serving the QA architects, test leads, and all these testing market.
Which is
but how we can take the test execution platform to developer market was a very interesting theme that I came across in Google Labs and Salesforce Labs, arranged by the partners on the board. They arranged the meeting that how it will look like, and that's how it started.
Very interesting. Thank you. I want to take one of the points that you made, and you made earlier also about team bandwidth, your product team bandwidth and your GTM team bandwidth, right? Karthi, I'll take it to you first to say, who owns this entire thing of customer side to then product side, adoption, engagement, and then conversion, right? There is product team, there is design team, then there is content, digital marketing, customer facing, maybe sales team, right? They're all working in sync, but from an ownership perspective of what metric, right? How is the organization structured? If you could share some thoughts.
Yeah. So what Azad said is very, very important for everyone to understand. Like, don't clog your pipeline of your product and GTM with one or two customers hogging the whole things. Okay. We learned it the hard way, one or two times. Now we are coming out of it, I should say. So that is very important. And so how it is in sync is, so 70% of the roadmap is built by the product team by looking at the market, by looking at customers' requests, and by looking at competition or talking to customers. So they build the 70% of the roadmap, and 30% is left for the sales to drive it. So when they talk to some customers, they may open up some couple of interesting features that every other customer will request for. Okay. Say for example, it could be an integration into an important ecosystem. In our case, it was like Salesloft. We did Salesforce, we did HubSpot, everything. But Salesloft we did not. But many of the customers started asking it. It was not in our roadmap, but the customers started asking it. So that brought into the immediate roadmap of the product. So we keep that balance. Looking at the larger segment, that will be the 70% of the roadmap, and 30% is driven by the sales. So that's how we try to keep in sync, because we don't want to leave out customers or just one important feature where other customers will also get benefited, which in hindsight only we'll be able to know when you actually talk to some different customer segments. So that's how we balance it out.
Got it. There's one more question, this one for Karthi. What are the GTM nuances for building in India and selling in US for early stage firms? Is on the ground presence in the US necessary? Right. And of course, we have somebody sitting in the US for a specific audience. Nirman can talk a little bit of what is the value of face-to-face, but Karthi, targeted you first this question, and Asad also maybe can chime in, right? At what point do you realize that on the ground presence is necessary, or so far you feel you're okay functioning remotely? Just throw some light on the Indo-US corridor thing.
Yes. So the biggest
interested about this, right? Because we're seeing combination of things, right? First of all, the world is anyway sort of become remote, but will it come back? Maybe part of the conversation as well.
Yes. So that's a good question, because we have a very good leverage on not just cost alone. Today we have very good resources in all the fronts to build a great product. So the product is the first part of the GTM, like what Asad was also saying. Like, the product becomes the biggest GTM. It should solve the problem, at least one or two problems, very effectively and quickly, and help them find the value. So that is the first GTM part, I would say. The second important aspect is content. So how do you build content? So content does not have to show your face, etc. You don't have to worry about it, and it's spread across the world through your distribution channels, right? So the content plays the second most important role. And if you ask me, do you require any field force in the US? Just now we have hired first person in US today. So after 4 years of into the market, of course you can take like 2 years of active selling. We have brought in the first seller in the US. So selling in the US, and to be honest, every organization in US have now adopted like global selling. So they don't look for like people have to be in US. Of course, they require some good amount of support. When they have some issues, if you have a very good team that can help them out, overcome those issues and move on with their job immediately, that serves the purpose. It's not the upfront. It's basically once they sign up. If you could have a team that can back it up from India also, they are happy about it. So there is no qualms about buying from an Indian organization or any other organization by any US organization. So the key is product and content, because content actually helps them understand what you are selling, why you are selling. and the product shows what is the problem they are solving. So these two, if you take care, you are there already.
Got it. Nirman, you want to chime in?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I totally agree with Karthi over there. It really just depends on the kind of go-to-market in general, right? Like if it's an enterprise-driven go-to-market where you have to take someone out for lunch and you have to find that champion and do things like that, you probably might want someone on ground. But I mean, for us, we've been on ground, and essentially we've just been as global of a company as, Lambda Test or Hippo Video, right? Like, it's just the fact that at the end of the day, when it's a product-led growth company, what people come to you eventually is for that experience of the product. And then, if there's any kind of other face-to-face talk required, that can happen over a video call in general. So I have personally, in my very little tiny experience, not found that having someone in the US is helpful.
Got it. Oh, very helpful. Another question coming in, which I was also thinking about, which is very good again from Avinash. What processes do you follow to understand your users' usage, qualitative and quantitative? How do you take out actionable insights for entire org to work on? Right? I think nuanced question could be a detailed question, right? Who speaks to the customer on a regular basis? Across, as you evolve, also, do you continue to have one-on-one conversations? Or are they, are you starting to draw from data-driven insights of usage of product, etc.? And I'm sure the answer is a hybrid word, but curious to hear, right? Nirman, you did mention the data-driven approach to learning about your customers, right?
Yeah.
And then there is the other aspect of actually having conversations, right? Getting on the phone, talking to them for half an hour, 1 hour, and asking them a few questions. How are you using it? What are you liking? What are you not liking? Just throw some light on quantitative, qualitative understanding of, what processes do you do?
Yeah, I think so. The typical product roadmap, right? This understanding what to build and how to design it, that for me has always come from talking to customers, like really understanding like what people are saying, what they're actually meaning behind it, things like that. The second part is to measure how well it's actually performing, right? Like 100 people tell you this is what we want, you build that, it doesn't really work, right? So that's where the data-driven things become more important. That's when you're tracking, active usage, engagement, those kind of KPIs and metrics. But for me, that initial roadmap always comes from the conversation. It rarely comes from saying, 30 people upvoted this, so let's do this. It really comes from that one-on-one conversations.
Got it. Asad, maybe you could throw some light because you are furthest ahead in the journey, if we could say that, right? From a Series B perspective, is there still that much focus on having direct conversations with customers? Right, and how much is on that versus measuring usage, engagement, like you were also mentioning?
For us, it's hybrid now, but early stage definitely you should talk to your customers. That is the key. Up to certain extent, reach out to the customer from time to time basis, see what is working for them, what is not working for them, and you have other channels like your customer delight team, which can actually collect the data and push into the analytics. And I'm very strong believer that even in the early stage, if you can start building the integrated metric all around the different functions. So whether it's sales or GTM and product and engineering, the overall metric integration, how the information is flowing from one function to another function. For example, my salesperson knows a micro intent of the customer. If I talk about the micro intent, that we stitch very long, that where actually started originating, what he was searching a step back, and what he was looking at, what content he was looking at, and how much time he spent on particular page. It's not only our website, it's different websites where the referrals are coming in. And imagine the account executive, which is getting a lot of data about the customer and the history, and is going into the call. That is a very different call than actually you will go with. But in product side, customer delight team, which sits on the customer support, whether it's a chat on the email or portal, that is a huge data pipeline that you get a lot of product roadmap feedback, even sales, even billing, a lot of issues that you have to tune the billing. I mean, imagine that your customer started explaining that, I mean, there's no way I can unsubscribe. right? And I've seen that many products, they ask you to send the email to actually to I mean to
Yeah.
allow the user to churn the customer. I
Yeah.
mean, you see that you can staff you, but big believer in give them a tool to unsubscribe anytime. This is working for us because I'll tell you, whatever the churn we see, around 25% of them are returning in every quarter. They're not churning because the product is bad. They give you the right feedback. They're churning because they don't have certain month, they don't have uses, and they cannot afford to give you even $20 in that. But if you don't allow them to unsubscribe at the same time, uh, you lose the customer forever. They never come back. So all these feedback comes from different channels, that how you collect the data, integrate it, and on engineering side, if the quality score, for example, our test, for us, the test is a unit. How fast tested is the quality of the test is our Eureka metric, and there's a lot of algorithm around that metric, that one index we figure out if the index is going less than 40 or less than greater than 70, and behind that there is algorithm that, okay, because of these attributes we'll figure it out, the quality of the test is very high, right? And if it is low, this is concerned to the product management team, the engineering team, and the sales team all together. We get to know that our tests are getting slow after a week, and imagine the experience is going bad and your product team is not aware about it. They can't get the information within 24 hours, which is very difficult in the cloud space. Is our IP that can we get to know within 5 hours? Can we take the corrective measures faster? So your data integrations and metric, all these things grow gradually. In early stage you cannot do everything, but I will suggest you, if you have a capital, if you have resources, do it for the long term investment. This will help you insanely, because when you grow you scale very fast. You have 2-3 rounds coming in, you have capital in place, there's a lot of pressure to grow faster. You cannot keep 360-degree wheel rolling out if you don't have frameworks in place, at least some level of frameworks in place.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very important point that you're making, that you need to build internal processes, systems, and tools that enable data sharing and information sharing about customer usage and their satisfaction. And then who has to take action within the team, right? And maybe it's rarely is it only one team. More often than not, multiple people together have to come together and solve a problem, right? So infrastructure building is what you are suggesting as investment.
For example, I'll give you one thing. Actually, I didn't speak about it, but we reach out to the customer that your test has failed. They don't reach out to us,
Yeah.
and this changes the whole game, because uh, if you're reaching out to the customer that you ran 1,000 tests and two of them failed, and they'll get to know about it after 2 hours when the test should has completed, right?
Mm.
The trust has increased because they believe that we are watching. It's not going out of our sight. And these two tests which failed, it's serious matter to us.
Right.
And that quality we have to improve. If you don't have a data in place and the metric in place, very difficult.
What is customer delight that you're talking about? That is customer delight, because
For,
then they'll realize.
for us, customer delight is customer success, sales together. That's our, and it's not different, or I mean it's not a different parts. They work tightly in tight integration, that how they serve to the customers actually.
Got it. Got it. No, very, very insightful. Amazing that part was. Another question from Sadhna Kanoria of SaaS Insider. This is for Karthi. What have been some of your successful sales strategies so far? And in your opinion, what will help catapult your outreach in various regions, say India versus Middle East and Northern Africa? Is the user adoption behavior different?
Okay. So we are early in the days of rest of the world. We are primarily into US, but one important aspect that is helping us, we are seeing some initial success. What Azad was saying, like the affiliate and the reseller are helping a lot. in entering into new territory. So that is going to be the important sales strategies when you actually, especially enter into MENA or Europe, where you need a strong local presence. So you go take that route, and maybe later you can build your own sales force, etc. and all. And the user behavior part, we have not seen any difference per se. We are a very horizontal oriented product segment. Videos is content generation. So we don't see any difference even between sales and marketing. Okay, all they create is content, but the content is going to be different for different audiences. That's it, and the measurements are going to be different. But to talk on the sales strategies for the MENA region or in the EU, we will be taking the reseller position strongly. That's what I will.
Got it. Got it. Very helpful. Thank you so much. No, I think fascinating discussion. There is still so many aspects that we can talk about, different journeys, and go deeper into, right? Maybe this is a cue for us to say we'll do a part 2 of this conversation sometime, right? And hopefully there is, Nirman and team have moved from seed to Series A and beyond. And, Karthi and Asad, they've moved even higher in scale, and there'll be other learnings of the next phase, right? We'll keep that in mind, right? But absolutely amazing discussion today. And thank you everyone for attending. Particular thanks to Nirman, Asad, and Karthi for joining us and spending so much time and insightful answers with experiences, right? Which is on ground, which is real, which is absolutely what everybody wants to see. Really thankful from Speciale Talks to everybody. Wish you guys all the best. Shout out to all the audience, all these 3 companies, amazing founders, amazing teams building amazing products, and they are hiring, right? If anybody is looking to join exciting growth stage startups, please give them a shout out. They'll be available on social media across platforms, right? And we'll also put out their handles, LinkedIn handles, and emails, and Twitter handles for everybody to reach out to them, right? With that, we'll sign off today's session. Thank you, Karthi. Thank you, Asad. Thank you, Nirman, once again.